In this lesson, we'll apply fillets to a model. After completing this lesson, you'll be able to create a fillet and modify a fillet feature. In Fusion 360, we want to start with the supplied file, locking plate. We're going to apply fillets to this model, and we're going to use it in a few lessons. So from here, let's identify areas in which we can apply a fillet and round corners off on this sharp design. To get started, we want to select Modify, Fillet. And again, if you've made any changes to your toolbar, it can be found by using the Modify dropdown. Inside of the fillet feature, we first have a type dropdown. There's fillet and there's rule fillet. Rule fillet will allow us to create fillets based on selected features or geometry. We're going to be exploring the basic fillet tool inside this lesson. Also note that there are options for things like radius type. We're going to be using constant radius, but we can also define these fillets by chord length or even a variable radius that changes along an edge. We can also define a corner type if we're working on multiple edges. For example, where these three edges intersect, this is a great time to take a look at setbacks and rolling ball. But first, let's take a look at applying fillets to this vertical feature. We're going to select these vertical edges, and in Fusion 360, you'll be able to select the edges through the solid body without rotating it. Once we've selected them, we have an on-screen manipulator that we can drag in, or we can manually enter a value, in this case 5 millimeters. Now that we've added that, notice that inside of the dialog box we have 4 edges selected, we have a constant radius fillet of 5 millimeters, and it's using tangency for the continuity. This dropdown also allows us to use curvature for the continuity. We're not going to get into the nuances between tangency and curvature right now, but make sure you understand how it changes the fillet on the screen and how it's going to affect the overall shape of your design. If you're creating a design that is going to be machined and generally is going to be parametric in nature, I would stick to the tangency option, as that's going to create a more consistent fillet for you. However, if you're creating more freeform organic designs, exploring the curvature continuity that makes use of tangency as well as the weight of curvature can be helpful. If we want to add a secondary selection for fillets, we can use the Add New Selection option. We can grab the vertical edges on this internal feature or this pocket, and then we can apply a fillet to those as well. Notice that we have 2 separate fillets identified here, and even though they're the same value right now, we can manually modify each of them. For example, if we decided that this should be 4 millimeters. Let's go ahead and say OK. And then if we want to make any adjustments like any other feature, simply go down to the timeline, right-click and select Edit Feature. Let's make the fillet radius on the internal corners 2.5 millimeters, and then we'll say OK. While we're in here exploring fillet, let's take a quick look at some of the other fillet options. I'm going to select this vertical edge as well as these 2 edges leading in and manually enter a value of 1 millimeter. Where they intersect in the corner is defined as a rolling ball type. If we change this to a setback type, it'll change the way in which the fillet is created and how those 3 intersect with each other. So keep in mind that this option, rolling ball or setback, is going to change the way in which your fillets are interacting with each other when they intersect at a corner. Also note that we can clear out any of our selections by hitting the X option, which will allow us to restart. If we want to take a look at some of the other options, such as variable radius, we can select an edge and then we can define the fillet at the start and the end. For example, if we want it to be 0.5 millimeters at the start, and we want it to increase to a value of 2 millimeters at the end, we can use this variable radius type that allows us to explore that option. Keep in mind that the variable radius type is going to be a little bit trickier to define, especially with more complex geometry. And if we need to, we can add intermediate points and define the values in there. For example, if we want this intermediate point to be right in the middle, we can define it as 0.75, and we can change the way in which that fillet gradually changes. We can also create additional points or move this position farther down the line to again change the way in which that fillet behaves. But again, keep in mind that if the end goal is for manufacturing this part through CNC milling that using standard values, such as a constant radius, and keeping it consistent along a part is going to be easier to manufacture. So make sure there's a valid design decision before choosing that route. For our purposes, let's go ahead and save this file. We're going to continue using it in the next lesson.